Hey, my name is Alec Wenzel, and today I'm going to do a short lesson for you on what Sus4 and Add4 chords are and how they can kind of spice up our playing. So I'm going to play for about a minute, and then right after that, we're going to go over how to build a Sus4 chord or an Add4 chord of both a major and a minor quality. And then right after that, we're going to get started on some easy Sus4 and Add4 shapes so that you can get started using some of these right away. And with that, I'm going to go into this jam really quickly, and I'll see you on the other side to talk about how we would build a Sus4 or Add4 chord. Hey, we should just be coming out of the jam right now, and if you've made it this far, please give me a quick like and subscribe to my channel, maybe leave a comment. That stuff really helps me out. I'm trying to grow the channel, and any like, subscribe, watch time means the world to me. Hopefully it'll have you coming back to check out some more content. But thanks so much, and let's get back to the lesson. All right, so hopefully that jam was fun and it inspired you and could sort of help you hear how these sort of sus or add4 chords could make a chord progression sound a little bit more interesting or ambiguous, give you different places to go. Now, the chord progression that I was playing was really just D, A minor, and then G. But what I had replaced those chords with were a D add 4, an A minor 7 add 4, and then a G dominant 7 sus chord. Sounds a little bit like the Beginning to Hard Day's Night by the Beatles. So how did I get those chords, right? How do you build a sus chord or an add4 chord? Well, let's explain the difference between sus chords and add4 chords really quickly. Now, a sus4 chord is what you get when you replace the third of any chord with the fourth note from the scale that that chord was derived from. That's a sus4 chord. And I know that sounds like a mouthful, but we'll get to that in 1 second. And then an add4 or an add 11, I'm just going to call it add4 from here on out, but add 11 is when we're kind of putting that note higher. An add4 chord is when we are adding the fourth note of a chord's sort of parent scale to the chord in addition to the third. Sus chords are when we are replacing the third in the chord with the fourth note from the scale, and add4s are when we are adding the fourth in addition to the third note from the scale. And this gives us some kind of fun, unique, interesting voicings to play around with. They can sound very jazzy. They can sound kind of John Mayer-esque. So then, how do we build a sort of sus4 chord? For that, we have to know what notes are in our scales. In a scale, we attach a number to each of the notes in that scale, right? Our major scales have 7 notes in them, with our first note being repeated at the top. So C is both 1 and 8 in this case. And then the notes in between go like this, right? C is going to be 1, D is going to be 2, E is going to be 3, F is going to be 4, G is going to be 5, A is going to be 6, B is going to be 7, and then we are back at the top with C again, right? Now that we know what notes are in our scale, we can then play around with notes that go in specific chords. A C major chord, right? Our chords are built from the 1, the 3, and the 5 of the given scale. So in this case, in C, it's going to be C, E, and G. A major chord then would be C, E, G. It sounds like our major chord that we know and love. Now, if we wanted to turn this into a sus chord, like I said before, a sus chord is what happens when we replace the third, right? And our third is E, right? Third note of the scale, it's our third. We're going to replace that with F, and we're going to do that like this, right? So all I did was just move the E note up a half step to become the fourth note of that scale, right? And that's how we get a sus chord. How do we get an add 4 chord? An add 4 chord is what happens when we add the fourth note of our scale to a chord that includes the third, right? This is that first chord I was playing. The first chord I was playing was a D add 4, right? So if we played a C add 4, it would sound like that, right? Because now I've got my C and my third and my fourth. And that just sort of gives us this nice little half step rub that kind of gives us a just sort of thoughtful sound, in my opinion. So that's it, right? That's how we build very simple sus4 or add 4 chords. Now let's talk about some simple shapes to just get you started immediately in using them. All right, so now that we sort of know what sus4 chords and add 4 chords are, let's talk about a few quick shapes to get you using these immediately. So some stock sort of movable sus chord shapes. This first one we're going to build sort of from our C major bar chord. We're going back to C again just because it's an easy place to start. What we're going to do to get this sort of C sus chord is start with our normal C major bar chord. I'm barring in the 8th fret, and then I've got a sort of normal E shape bar. Now what I'm going to do to get to this sus chord is rearrange my fingers a little bit. We're going to do a sort of Jimi Hendrix voicing of this C major chord now. What we did to get that Jimi Hendrix shape is we have wrapped our thumb around to grab the low E in the 8th fret. Our third finger has moved to the D string 10th fret. Our second finger is on the G string in the 9th fret. And our first finger is in the 8th fret on the B string. And so now we've got this C major chord. Basically like our bar chord, except we're just moving some notes around. Now that we've got this, the way that we make it a sus chord is by just putting our pinky in the 10th fret in front of our second finger. So now what our chord should look like is our thumb is on the 8th fret of the low E, our third finger is in the 10th fret of the D, and our pinky is now on the 10th fret of the G, and our first finger has remained in the same spot in the 8th fret on the B, and we've got our sus chord. Now, because this shape is based on a bar chord, we can move this around, and then wherever my thumb lands, that will be the name of the sus chord. So you can move this kind of like your normal bar chords. My thumb is in the 8th fret here, it's a C sus chord, but if I move it down, now my thumb is in the 5th fret, and I kept my fingers in the same relative spacing, and I've got an A sus chord. So C sus chord, moving it to an A sus chord. If I move that down 2 more frets, so my thumb is in the 3rd fret, now I have a G sus chord, right? And then we can just move this up chromatically. We can put them anywhere that we want. Now, something I didn't mention is that if you're having trouble wrapping your thumb around the top, that's not actually the important part. The important part is these sort of inside 3 strings. And you can move that around the exact same way. Right, so that's all without the thumb. The thumb is just an easy way to help us name the chord and know where we are on the guitar, because most of us are more familiar with bass notes on our low E string. Thumb is an added bonus, it makes things more full, but not required. All right, and so that is sort of our easy E bass note sus chord. Now you might be saying, we did this all based off of a major chord, well, what about a minor chord, right? Well, because we're replacing the third in any chord, right? We're replacing the third. The third is what determines whether or not things are major or minor. So if the third is replaced, you can use a sus chord in place of a minor chord, but it's going to look like the same shape either way because we're replacing that third, right? So if I have an A minor chord, playing just your sort of normal A minor bar chord, if I want to turn that into a sus chord, it's not going to be minor anymore, it'll be sus, right? And so we would do that by doing something like this. So same shape. It's just that this minor third would have been here. Now we've just made it into a sus. I suppose I could do it like this with the bar. All right, so now that we've got sus chords, let's look at some add 4 chords. This section is going to have 3 different chords because in the previous section, right, when we were just making a sus chord, it's replacing the third. So you're going to use the same shape whether or not your chord was major or minor to begin with. This is an add 4, so we're adding it. We're going to have 3 chords for this section, like I said, because we're going to have 2 options for major, 1 option for minor. I'm going to give you 2 options for major because one is really difficult, and I would encourage you to try it, but I had to work at it for a long time to get the stretch right. And then the other one will sort of be a little bit more simple. So let's start with that simpler one. This first one, we are adding a 4 to the sort of existing chord without really changing anything. And we're going to start again by making this sort of C major bar shape. I'm barring again in the 8th fret, and I'm making just a simple E shape. So this has all of our notes in it. We got 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, right? So now how do we get this 4 in there? We can do it by removing our 3rd finger, right, and just including the F from where it was in that scale, right? So now our chord would look like this. We would have 1, 4, 1, 3, 5, and then 1 again. So really simple, right? Just off of our normal bar shape to our add 4 shape by moving that 3rd finger in place of the pinky and leaving that A string open to the bar. The fingers would sort of look like this. I've got my 1st finger barring our E and our A in the 8th fret. My 3rd finger is on the D in the 10th fret. My 2nd finger is on the G in the 9th fret. My bar again, 1st finger bar is covering B and high E both in the 8th fret, right? So that's a nice, beautiful add 4 chord. This is an add 4 chord. This is the one that I was using in the video that I just really like because I feel like it sounds a little bit airier. It's because that 4 is up the octave. And this is the hard one, right? Work at it, but if you can't get it right away, like, don't worry about it. Right? And so this shape is going 2nd finger on the low E of the 8th fret. My pinky is grabbing the 3rd in the 9th fret. My 1st finger is on the 6th fret of the B string, and that's where our 4 is coming from, and then my 3rd finger is on the high E there in the 8th fret. This is a significantly more difficult chord to play, like I said, so don't worry about it if you can't get it. But both of those shapes are movable. So that's our normal sort of C major bar shape. Here's that add 4. And then it moves around the exact same way you would move a bar chord. So there I just played A add 4. That's a G add 4, right? Back to C add 4. D add 4, right? And I'm doing all of that by just moving the bar like you would move a normal bar chord. I can do the same thing with the more complex version too. Now I can move that. Move it down. I can move it higher. Same thing, right? As long as we're keeping the relative shape the same, we can move those chords wherever you want to move them. Now we have a movable minor add 4, and it's going to look like this, but we're going to get there from our normal bar chord. This is now an A minor bar chord. Right, I am barring in the 5th fret, and then I am just making a E minor shape. So now this voicing is a little different, right? We're going to use our 2nd finger on the low E. We're going to use our 3rd finger on the D, and our pinky is going to be on the G. These are all in the 5th fret, just where our bar was. And then our 1st finger has moved back to the 3rd fret on the B string. And that is the voicing that I was using in that sort of jam track from earlier. And this is movable as well, right? We can shift it up and down. sounds already pretty jazzy and melodic. So that is 2 movable major add 4 shapes that I really like, and then we have 1 minor add 4 shape that I use all the time that I also really like. So there are some nice, easy, stock sus and add 4 options for you to start using in your playing as long as you memorize the shape. Hopefully those diagrams on screen helped you see what was going on. And with that, hopefully you now have a better understanding of what sus4 chords and add 4 chords are, and hopefully you also have some just sort of easy options to help start to work those sounds into your playing. With that, my name is Alec Wenzel, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Like I said a little bit earlier, please like and subscribe, leave a comment. That stuff really helps me out, and I love to hear from you guys, and it means the world to me that you hopefully want to come back and check out some more of my content. So come back and check out some more lessons from me and gear reviews. We've got tons of stuff coming up, and I'm excited to be recording again. Thanks so much, and I hope you have a great night.